The Adventurer Conqueror King system, known as ACKS for short, is a sword, sorcery, sandbox-style OSR game built off the BX system. It's designed by Alexander McCrease with some additional design by Travis Allison and Greg Tito. And so this game came out, I want to say, in the early 2010s. Actually, I think 2011. To make a long story short, this is a BX clone. You have, with some exceptions. That's the kicker with these games, right? This game is BX plus this, or this game is first edition plus this. So I won't get too much into the basics, but we'll just kind of go through the table of contents and briefly discuss what's going on here. You have your introduction, which talks about the game, the basis of the game, and all that kind of stuff. Stuff that you've read before. There's a good character play example and some fiction in here too. That's nice to read. Chapter 2 is characters, and it talks about creating characters, including their abilities and whatnot. There are 3 types of classes here. There are 4 core classes, which are the 4 that you come to know and love: fighter, thief, mage, and cleric. And then this game does a couple of different things. First of all, you have some campaign classes. So you can't multi-class in most old school games, right? But this kind of gives you a way to multi-class, but have a single class. And so they call them campaign classes. You have the assassin and the bard and whatnot. And then you have demi-human classes. Well, there's 2 modes of thought about dealing with races and classes in old school style games. One way is, well, the race is a class. And the other way is separating out race and class. And what this game does, it kind of combines the 2. So if you're one of the core classes or a campaign class, you're a human. But if you're playing a Dwarven Vault Guard, you're definitely a dwarf and a fighter. But there's also a Dwarven Craft Priest, which is a singular class that is a dwarf and a priest. So it's like a multi-class, much like how the races class is anyway. And it's quite nice. I really like it. One of the things that they do with the fighter type classes and the thief type classes is they have a cleaving rule, which works similar to some of the old school style games work, but this rule works such that if you take an opponent down to 0 hit points, you get an additional attack. And you can keep doing that a number of times up to your current level. So it does help out with the linear fighter quadratic mage problem. That's quite nice. Of course, you got your typical alignment stuff. So we don't want to get into that. Chapter 3 is equipment. I won't get too much into that. But then chapter 4 is proficiencies. Now, something I hadn't talked about before is there's a proficiency system in this game. You get proficiencies for your race. You get proficiencies for your class. And you also get general proficiencies. And you gain those as you advance in level. This game maxes out at level 14, just like the Moldvay basic game. And so you'll get another proficiencies, and those things that give you special abilities, kind of like talents and feats. In chapter 5 is spells, and it talks about spell casting there. And it works slightly differently. It gives you some flexibility. So spell casting works like this. During a single day, a spellcaster can cast a number of spells of each level indicated on their spell chart. But the thing is that they don't have to memorize or prepare spells. They can cast any and all spells in their repertoire that matches the caster level. Now, clerics, their spell list, their repertoire is basically all the spells on their spell list. And the spell list is customized by their god. Now, with wizards, their repertoire will be more limited. That will depend on level and intelligence bonus. And so as you go up in levels, you increase your repertoire. So, and there's some rules about swapping things in and out of your repertoire. It makes for a more flexible cast. It's very similar to the way I think 5th edition does spell casting. So that's kind of nice. Chapter 6 is adventures, and this is where I'm going to get into one of the different ways that this system is compared to other OSR style games. You know, you have a lot of the standard stuff talking about dungeon adventures, wilderness adventures, encounters, reactions, evasions, pursuit, and so on and so forth. But your mechanic for things is, in a lot of places, just based on the D20 roll, where you're looking for a certain number. Like, for example, in the Getting Lost section, you have to make a navigation roll, but in in this game, instead of, say, having to roll a percentage or rolling a d6 to see if you succeed in your navigation, you're rolling a d20 and hitting a number. Like in Plains, you need a 4+, in Forest, you need a 7+. And I find that to be pretty cool. Actually, I'll touch on that a little bit more later. I'm just kind of giving an overview for the PDF right now, but this is one of those things that I really like. So I'm going to continue going on here. In Chapter 7, you have campaigns. It has rules for magic research and building constructs, strongholds and domains, which I find really interesting. Now, there's a formulaic system for rules for strongholds and domains and all that kind of stuff. And even like having an economy in your campaign. And this is one of those things that I find neat because it's the kind of stuff that I would like improvise or fudge. And I was always concerned about my consistency with that kind of stuff. But this book just has a great system for it. Now, I know some people that say that these types of systems aren't really realistic and fantasy RPG economies are just broken or what have you. But number one, I'm not an economist. And number two, I mainly care about verisimilitude. And so if it feels real enough for me, it works for me. And this system feels real enough for me. And then in Chapter 8 is monsters. It has the standard monsters that you expect and some specific types. And then Chapter 9 has treasure, including random treasure generation and your different treasure types and so on and so forth. Chapter 10 is secrets, and it's talking about constructing a campaign setting, regions, constructing dungeons and all this kind of stuff. So just more DM advice stuff, and it is pretty good. That's the overview of the book. I didn't really go too much into the mechanics of the system because I'm going to talk about it here, and it's one of the things that I love. There are, I would say, 2 or 3 things that I really love about the system, and it's why it's my OSR game of choice. Number 1 is the way that the game handles classes. I love it. I love being able to have the racial character class, which is kind of a compromise between race as class and the decoupling of race and class. The custom classes is a way to handle your people that like to play multi-class characters, but you won't have the complexity of that. And in another supplement, they give you rules on how to build that. And I find that fantastic. Another thing that I like is that the game is built on a D20 system. It's more consistent than your other OSR style games. A lot of other OSR style games where you go, here you're rolling a D20, but here you're rolling percentile dice, and here you're rolling 2d6. That just gets old, and I like having more of a standard system. For example, the thieves have, instead of percentile on their charts, it's a d20 based chart. Now, I've seen Professor Dungeon Master does this he has a conversion for this on his Patreon, but this is another place where I've seen it in a published work, and I really like it. I won't say it makes more sense to me, but I like rolling high on things being good, and I like rolling the 20-sided die. So, saves is a d20 base, attack rolls are d20 base, and the thief skills are d20 base, and other stuff is d20 base. Like opening doors, you have to roll, I believe, an 18, but if you have a strength of 13, you reduce that by 4. I may be getting the numbers wrong, but yeah, opening a door, hearing noise, all that kind of stuff. You're rolling a d20 and looking for a specific target number. And the thing is that the target number is set, just like you would expect in an old school style game. And it really works. Oh, well, I want to talk about one oddity about this D20 style system, and something that I house rule for my game is the way that you treat armor class. Armor class is ascending. That's great. But the thing is that, instead of having an armor class of 13, you would have an armor class of 3. And here's why they do that. Because instead of an attack bonus, you have an attack throw. And that's a d20 roll as well. And you have a number. For example, a first level thief has an attack throw of 10 plus. And so what you do is you add the opponent's armor class to that number. And that's what you need to hit that opponent. Which is all fine and good, but it's just kind of weird to me. So when I run my games, I basically take 10, subtract the attack throw, and that's the character's base attack bonus. And for the opponents, I just add 10 to their armor class, and it's the same thing. It's the same thing mathematically, except now people are rolling and doing math like they do in your more modern D&D, and it's just fine. It's not the most intuitive way to handle armor class, in my opinion. And so we just switched it back, and it's a pretty easy change, and that's really great. So those are the things. The way classes work, the way the D20 charts work, and as I mentioned before, the third thing is just the economy. It's a game where the economy is consistent, and it makes sense to me. It works on me from a verisimilitude, and so that is why ACKS, Adventurer Conqueror King system, is my OSR game of choice. Thanks for sticking with me. This is basically part one of a two-part series about old school OSR style gaming. I'm going to do another video about why I have returned to old school style gaming, even though I haven't completely left other games behind. I've just had a personal renaissance when it comes to this thing, and I'd like to tell you that story and my reasons why. So thanks for listening and watching. Until next time, see you later.